Hello, everybody. Welcome to PartnerSource webinar on the QCARE program. My name is Bill Minick. I'm the founder and chairman of PartnerSource, and joining you live today from PartnerSource Studio B at home, and hope that you're enjoying your new work environment. Thank you for joining us for this simple and short online learning. QCARE is the most significant development in Texas injury benefit programs in almost 20 years. We're delighted to have the chance to share this with you on behalf of PartnerSource. I'm here with Staci Cassidy. Staci is one
Good
of
afternoon, everyone.
Hey, Staci. Staci is one of our 6 PartnerSource attorneys and team leader for many of our clients. Let's start by reviewing the agenda for today. And you'll see there, we're going to talk a little bit about who is AROC, because AROC created the QCARE designation. We'll discuss why rebranding and industry standards for Texas non-subscription is important. What is QCARE? A little bit about how PartnerSource can support you through this process, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. If you will, notice you should have a little control panel for the webinar, and there's a question feature. So during the course of our discussion, if you want to submit any questions to Staci and me, please type them in there, and we hope to have enough time to address a couple of questions at the end. All right, let's continue. Staci, before we launch into what is QCARE, let's talk a little bit about just confirming who we are at PartnerSource.
Sure. Thanks, Bill, and thanks to everyone out there joining us today. PartnerSource is the leading consultant to Texas injury benefit programs. The team here at PartnerSource has deep experience in both group health and disability benefits, workers' compensation, litigation management. We have a number of clients in retail, healthcare, logistics, and other industries. And these clients have all had great success through these programs, providing better benefits to their workers. And it has benefited both the employees and the company themselves. So, Bill, as you know, PartnerSource is a member of the Texas Injury Benefit Trade Group, the Association for Responsible Alternatives to Workers' Compensation, or AROC. And it's great to be here with you today to talk about this new QCARE designation program.
All right, so AROC, the Association for Responsible Alternatives, as Staci mentioned, is a nonprofit trade group dedicated to protecting and promoting Texas injury benefit programs. As you know, these programs are big and successful. I've personally been developing these programs for 30 years. We have over 25 years of experience at PartnerSource doing this. We have seen over 1 million Texas injury benefit claims successfully resolved in the past 30 years. There's well over 1 million Texas employees that are covered by injury benefit programs, and literally billions of dollars have been paid out in benefits and liability awards to date. So AROC has done a good job of organizing a big group of employers and insurance companies and service providers to develop the QCARE program.
So, Bill, as successful as these programs have been, why don't you tell our viewers why now we're talking about rebranding Texas non-subscription to QCARE?
This is not a new conversation. I mean, we've always talked about opt-out and non-subscription from workers' compensation, and known that this sounds like something the employer's not doing something important, but it was the terminology we inherited, and in some cases we're branded with. And we've stepped back. AROC has done a great job of stepping back as an organization and thinking about how can we address the need for a positive and clear message for injury benefit programs. Texas legislators and regulators for a long time have been asking this question: how do we know who the good guys and the bad guys are? And we haven't had a response to that. And as a result, we've seen the Texas legislature on numerous occasions introduce legislation to mandate workers' compensation, at least on some segment of the industry. And we've also seen the Texas Division of Workers' Compensation pursue new legislation or regulations that would require additional information reporting on injury benefit programs, because they too want to know who are these programs and what do they do. So the negative terminology has not only presented challenges for us at the legislature and with regulators, but it's also not been good for employee morale. I mean, we don't want to be known as opt-out or non-subscription, that we're not doing something important. And I guess lastly, it's put the employer at some disadvantage with customers and other important relationships, trying to explain what their program consists of and the integrity of that program, and has even presented a disadvantage in negligence liability litigation or at arbitration. Staci will talk a little bit further about that. So, Staci, where do we go from here after recognizing the need?
Well, and I know there's been a number of focus groups and meetings over the past 3 years as part of this huge industry collaboration. Tell us that, let's talk through how the actual launch of the QCARE designation happened.
So in planning the QCARE program, AROC leadership stepped back and said, well, before we describe the components of a responsible program, let's lay the groundwork, and they've done an amazing job laying the groundwork for this on the AROC website in a 6-part innovation series that launched last summer. So this was actually laying the groundwork for the QCARE program. You'll see the website here at aroc.org, arawc.org, and this 6-part innovation series walks through the goals and the results, and some great stories about Texas injury benefit programs, and the response to that has really been positive.
That's great. So they've got, we now finally, after 30 years of history, have a go-to source to see these goals and results and great stories.
So now it's time to continue to roll out the QCARE program. AROC has been sending out a lot of messages and articles, and we've seen significant coverage over the past few months in the Texas Tribune, in the Houston Chronicle, workerscompensation.com, and other publications about the QCARE program. So what is QCARE? It stands for Qualified Compensation Alternative for Recovering Employees. Why do we call it qualified? Because these programs have to satisfy 10 essential standards for the QCARE designation. So it's a qualified compensation alternative. It's an alternative to workers' compensation, and the focus is on recovering employees. It's not just about payouts and people staying at home. It's about getting people better, faster, with the best medical care possible, paying improved benefits, saving money, getting employees back to their families and their job faster. So Staci, if you would, let's put this rebranding, this designation of QCARE in the context of what choices Texas employers have in workplace injury protection.
Sure. On this next slide here, you'll actually see that there are now 3 different choices for how employers can address on-the-job injuries. An employer first option is to opt in to the state-run workers' compensation system. The second choice is to opt in to QCARE, and that employer develops a responsible Texas injury program that delivers better medical outcomes, improved benefits, and cost savings, and meets those 10 essential standards to earn that QCARE designation. The last choice is they can opt out, perhaps not provide any benefits to injured workers or meet any industry standard.
So notice how important this change in terminology is. We used to just talk about two choices. Either you carried workers' compensation or you opted out. And everyone who didn't have workers' compensation has been lumped in together. Now we're making it clear that many employers are not simply opting out, but they're actually taking an affirmative step to develop a quality, responsible injury benefit program. So the QCARE designation recognizes the time and effort and sophistication of the best Texas injury benefit programs. It's a voluntary, no-cost designation for Texas injury benefit programs that satisfy 10 basic standards for legal compliance, fairness in the treatment of injured workers, insurance protections, as well as professional claims administration. This is a self-certifying process. So in developing, as you can imagine, in a free market environment, highly competitive environment, where we've focused on the same federal and state rules for 30 years, the development of new criteria has been of some concern. So how do we do that in a way that's simple and fair, but also has credibility? So this is a self-certifying process where the employer or their authorized representative goes online to QCARE.org, confirms, self-certifies that they satisfy those 10 standards. And then we'll talk on the back end about how we have verification processes and professional administration for the QCARE program to help ensure its integrity. Staci, let's just start with what are those 10 basic standards for compliance, fairness, et cetera?
Sure. If you go to the QCARE website at www.QCARE.org, you'll find the 10 standards under the tab, What is QCARE? And here you can see the first 4. A QCARE employer is aware of their negligence liability exposure. A QCARE employer complies with state law and employee notices and filings. They have an injury benefit plan with defined benefits. They have a fair, well-communicated injury reporting process. And then the next slide will show additional 6 standards. We're not going to go into all of these for purposes of today, but you can see down at the bottom, you can click on detailed standards to learn more about each one. But here's the key. These standards are just the nuts and bolts of the requirements to have a responsible program. Many of you have a program in place that already satisfies these standards. And on top of it, there's great advantages to both you and the employee if you get the designation for your program.
Very good, Staci. As you mentioned, we're not covering all 10 of those standards in great detail today in the interest of time, but we do plan additional programs where we'll really break this down. But I think that what most people will find, what employers that currently sponsor injury benefit programs and their supporting service providers and carriers already know, is that these are nuts and bolts requirements for a responsible program. AROC has simply moved forward with trying to document what those are, and then supporting the continued improvement, clarity, and credibility for the industry and for these individual employers. So today, again, we're just navigating through this program. Let's take a look at the actual QCARE website homepage. So this is the homepage at QCARE.org, and you'll see that it's easy to navigate. We've got tabs there. AROC website has tabs for what is QCARE and why QCARE. Let me see if I can show you that with my little spotlight. Yeah, so what is QCARE, why QCARE, and there you'll see simple, distinct messaging, really transparent messaging directed to injured workers, to insurance agents who are so important in this process to help their clients understand that as part of getting the insurance coverage, setting up the claims administration, handling your state and federal compliance. This is another simple checkbox to confirm we've done all those important things and earned the QCARE designation and the credibility and advantages that go with that. You'll also see under each of those different boxes for employees, agents, and employers, there's a separate video and brochure with messaging for each of those three distinct groups. So, specifically, let's talk about employers and the advantages from that perspective. Again, super important to focus on the advantages of these programs for injured workers, for agents, and other interested parties. But let's focus on employers for a moment. The QCARE designation specifically offers these advantages. First is reputation management. Again, by bringing clarity and credibility to your Texas Injury Benefit Program, that you're not simply opting out of workers' compensation. Sustaining a competitive marketplace is important. We want carriers and service providers to understand the best practices, to develop and pursue implementation and further improvement of industry best practices, and for this industry to continue to be sustained and grow. And perhaps most significantly, in addition to that reputation management and ensuring that employers have choices among insurance providers and service providers, but let's talk about the enhanced defense of negligence liability claims or any regulatory investigations. Staci, what are you seeing on this?
So one of the things I see in some of these negligence liability cases is before we ever even get into whose fault the accident is or the injury is, which is the whole purpose of it, the plaintiff's lawyers like to cast a negative light on the employer before we ever get started by claiming they didn't do something they were supposed to do. They don't take care of their injured workers. They don't have workers' compensation insurance. So they sort of try to make the employer go in behind right from the get-go. And it's important to remember that your company's status outside the workers' compensation system is not invisible. Take a look at this next slide. This is an online list maintained by the Division of Worker or the Texas Department of Insurance, and every year on an annual basis, any employer who elects not to purchase workers' compensation files what's known as a DWC-5 form, and that employer goes on this list, and this is the list that plaintiff lawyers like to couch as the bad list. Those employers that are not doing something that they should be doing is what they try to paint. And you're on this list with other employers like yourself who may have responsible programs, but more importantly, you're also on this list with those that opt out and don't do anything for their injured workers. So this is not the only public list that we would recommend that you be part of.
That's exactly right, Staci. So I've heard so many situations with our clients and from our team leaders and from defense counsel where the plaintiff's opening our argument doesn't have to do with fault or damages. They immediately focus on this company does not do something important. They don't carry workers' comp. They opt out. They don't care about their injured workers. They make benefit decisions within their sole discretion. Well, when you hear those arguments now in a defense litigation context, you can say, time out. That's not right. And instead of trying to strap together your own argument about the time and effort and sophistication of this program, in a single word, QCARE, you've got the response and the measure of credibility and clarity that you deserve. So just a couple other things navigating around this website. You'll see here there is a tab to apply now. You see this button all over the QCARE website. The application function is very simple. AROC has also added this employer registry function. So in addition to self-certifying initially to the satisfaction of those 10 standards, the employer can indicate whether they want to be listed on the employer registry that's on this website. As Staci mentioned, there's already an online list that has your company name. If you're a non-subscriber, if you sponsor an injury benefit plan, your name is on that list, really whether you have a plan or not. All it says is that these companies don't have comp. Well, by taking that additional step of saying, we want to have the QCARE designation and be on that registry, now you have a public-facing and employee-facing confirmation of the responsibility and credibility of your program. The response to this feature has been super positive. Almost every single employer that has applied for the QCARE designation so far is on that list, and we see that list continue to grow. So click on the employer registry, and you'll see the amazing list of employers who have already obtained the QCARE designation. Again, these are companies that feel good about their injury benefit program, about how it's structured, how it complies with the law, and works well for all interested parties. And, also, it's worth pointing out, AROC has done an impressive job working with the Division of Workers' Compensation and supporting their compliance requirements, again, as a key part of this program. So let's get over here to the next slide. Bear with me just a moment. All right, so how does all this happen? You think about the back end of this program. Well, AROC has hired a company called Virtual Inc. for two things. Virtual does basic association management for AROC. They do that same type of administrative service where they're managing all the member lists and accounts payable and communications, all the different things that association management entails. But Virtual is also one of the leading professional services firms in the country for professional designations. So AROC relies upon Virtual both for its admin services and for the QCARE program administration services. They do this association management work for almost 100 other trade groups around the country, and they also do the certification designation programs through a team of over 200 professionals at Virtual. So Staci, with that background, again, we've talked about the 10 essential requirements. We've talked about the advantages. We've talked about how the program is administered on the back end, or who that administrator is, Virtual Inc. Why don't you talk a little bit about the verification procedures?
Sure.
Actually, that's for me to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd like you to walk us through that, Bill, but I can certainly do it.
Well, they're so simple a caveman can do it, right? Level 1, there's 3 different levels of verification in this program. So you think about Virtual, is sitting there monitoring the QCARE website and applications coming in. They're checking every one to confirm that applicant's name, that employer's name, is on the DWC list of employers that don't have workers' comp. So that's like a basic check on state law compliance, that they filed their Form 5 with the state. Then a sampling of employers, a random sample of employers, is then selected by Virtual to where they verify who the claims administrator and the insurance coverage. So if you look at QCARE requirements 9 and 10, you have to have insurance coverage that covers benefits and liability and expenses. You have to have an approved claims administrator. So that can be done in a couple of ways. So Virtual will reach out to that applicant and say, we'd like for you to confirm to us that you have the appropriate insurance coverage and claims administration in place. And that can be done in several ways. One is that the employer or their authorized representative could supply a certificate of insurance, even a redacted certificate of insurance, because AROC and Virtual don't care what the limits of coverage are. I mean, they're not checking on limits of coverage. They're not concerned about the renewal date. They do want to confirm that the policy incepted, that it began within the past year, and they're going to look at the company name, the insurance company name, and they're going to look at that policy number. And just from the prefix on that policy number, they can tell if that's the type of insurance product in the market today that satisfies the QCARE requirement. If the agent or employer would prefer not to provide a certificate of insurance or even a redacted certificate of insurance, they can do this through a phone call with the insurance agent. So, and then a further level 3 verification is done through a further sampling on a smaller percentage of applicants where they're going to be asked to verify all the QCARE standards. AROC is going to check the DWC-5 list. They're going to ask for who the claims administrator and insurance coverage is. Again, super simple, non-intrusive, not looking for any confidential information on that verification. And then on level 3, they're going to ask for a copy of the injury benefit plan or summary plan description. And the purpose of that will be to verify the other 10 requirements, numbers 3 through 8, to just deal with the injury benefit plan. So, for example, they'll confirm no fault coverage. They'll confirm that it's got medical and disability and death and dismemberment benefits. They'll confirm that there's a reasonable injury reporting requirement with a good cause exception. Just the simple nuts and bolts requirements that we find in almost all responsible injury benefit programs. And once they've done that verification, again, on just a sampling of the applications, then they would issue one of 2 decisions. Either they will award the QCARE designation, or they'll notify the employer that one of the requirements is not satisfied. AROC is not providing, and Virtual is not providing any compliance consulting. So, for example, if they say, it looks like your benefit plan doesn't comply with requirement 5 and 6 of the 10 standards, that's going to be up to that employer to go back to its insurance agent or their attorney or a consultant, whoever is advising them on their program, their third-party claims administrator perhaps, to address that issue and then come back and reapply for the designation.
So I like how this is a simple process to apply. But you see where it's got procedures on the back end for that accountability that we just walked through. And, it's my understanding that if the QCARE committee were to determine that a QCARE designee or somebody applying no longer met one of those standards, then that designation can also be rescinded. And I know you said that there's not confidential information in this procedure, these procedures we just went through, but if I'm an insurance carrier and I'm watching this today or an agent, can you tell us a little bit more about how that is not the case so that they're not worried about protecting their clients' confidential information, or they're not worried that's
Absolutely.
an issue?
Yes. So not only do employers obviously have a keen interest in confidentiality of information, and then couple this program with, frankly, a lot of transparency in terms of disclosure to injured workers in the state and the federal government. There's a lot of different points of transparency, but also protecting certain confidential information is important, particularly to the insurance community. And from the inception of this program, AROC has anticipated this and laid a solid foundation to address that interest. So to begin with, no confidential information is needed to apply for the QCARE designation. What information is requested? As we mentioned, verifying insurance coverage can be as simple as a phone call with the agent, or it can be a certificate of insurance, whatever the employer and their broker want to do on that. That information then is contained within a very small group. So we've talked about Virtual Inc., and Virtual takes its marching orders and direction and addresses any questions that they may not be certain about. They go to a QCARE committee that has been appointed by AROC. That QCARE committee is comprised of 3 individuals who are employer representatives and members of AROC. No service provider or insurance company can serve on that QCARE committee. So it's 3 employer managers from their claims and risk management departments, and those guys are elected on an annual basis. And the containment of that information within that small group is very important. So other members of AROC, even other members of AROC leadership and service providers, have no access to the information supplied by QCARE applicants. In addition to having policies and procedures that ensure that, each of these parties at virtual and on the QCARE committee have signed confidentiality agreements and conflict of interest agreements. Secondly, AROC and virtual are not constructing any database of claims information or policy information or any type of confidential information whatsoever, and are also not soliciting any business as a result of this process. They may ask a QCARE applicant if they want to join AROC, but there's no collection of lists or selling lists to providers or providing it in any respect to anybody. Each of these parties, particularly the QCARE committee members, the folks at virtual, even the webmaster, have signed confidentiality agreements and have confirmed that they have internet and computer IT security in place, and will not provide consulting or advice, as I mentioned earlier. So these same protections are described in more detail on the QCARE website, on the insurance agent tab, and in the agent brochure. So encourage folks in the insurance community to take a look at that. Staci, how about you summarize and wind up today's presentation?
Sure. So in summary, the QCARE designation program was collaboratively developed over a 3-year process. To get the designation, it's a voluntary, no-cost process. It's sort of like a seal of approval of your injury program. It's a simple, non-intrusive process to get designated, and it's professionally administered. That designation process is professionally administered, and it gives significant advantages to you good guys out there. So be recognized for the sophistication of your programs and what you're doing for injured workers. So I think that's it for our presentation today. I don't know if we have time to take some questions or if we've got some questions.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. And in the interest of time, I'm going to address the one that I think is the most significant here. And that is the QCARE designation annually renewable? Yes, it is. This will be an annual confirmation of satisfaction of those 10 QCARE standards. I'm sure the program will continue to improve, but it's really impressive what AROC and all of its members have done collectively over the past 3 years in thinking through how to lay the groundwork for this program, how to develop it in a way that has teeth, it has meaning, it has objectivity to what the standards are, and credibility to those standards, developed through a process that's non-intrusive and the protection of reasonable interests. And your PartnerSource team is here to help you make it happen. We've been developing and supporting these programs again for over 25 years, and I appreciate it, Staci, if you just have a final word about our availability to support.
Sure. I just want to remind everybody to reach out to your PartnerSource team, and we can certainly help you confirm you meet the standards. You can even have us handle your application and getting you designated. And we really encourage everybody to take advantage of this and be proud of your programs. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Staci, for helping lead today's QCARE presentation. PartnerSource has played a leading role in every innovation in Texas injury benefit plans in the past 25 years, and our team is here to support you. Please complete the webinar evaluation that you will receive by email immediately after today. And let us know if you have any further questions or if we can otherwise be of assistance. Have a great day. Thank you.